All right, welcome back. Well, as the union budget draws closer, the defence sector is expecting a strong statement of intent from the government. With geopolitical uncertainties, border security challenges and a push for Aatmanirbharta, the budget is seen as a critical moment for India's military modernization. This trend is already visible in the markets, with defence stocks rallying sharply ahead of the budget. In the previous budget, the government allocated around 681 crore of 81 billion to the Ministry of Defence, representing a 9.5% increase from a year ago. In the upcoming budget, experts anticipate a 20% increase in defence sector allocation. The primary expectation is a significant increase in capital allocation for indigenous defence procurement. Industry wants clear prioritization of Indian-made platforms across land, air and naval forces. There is a strong push to expand PLI and IDEX schemes to support defence startups and MSMEs. From drones and sensors to advanced electronics and materials, private players are seen as key to innovation and speed. Creation of advanced defence manufacturing corridors and test ranges is also a major demand. Industry says that limited access to trial and certification facilities continues to delay deployment and increase costs. DRDO is expected to receive accelerated funding for next-generation weapon systems, including missiles, air defence systems, electronics, warfare and autonomous platforms. A major focus area is, of course, drones, AI-enabled warfare and autonomous system. The sector is seeking clear budgetary support to scale production and move from pilots to mass deployment. Cyber defence, space warfare and electronic warfare are emerging as new battlefronts. Industry leaders want these domains to receive dedicated allocations and long-term capability roadmaps. Supply chain security remains a concern still, with demands for support in ammunition, propulsion systems and critical materials to reduce foreign dependence during crisis. Export promotion is another key ask, and the sector wants export financing, insurance support and diplomatic backing to meet India's defence export targets. Finally, skill development is seen as non-negotiable. Without a highly trained workforce across manufacturing, testing and system integration, indigenization will remain incomplete. The message from the Defence Ministry is clear. Without predictable orders, timely payments and long-term policy clarity, India's defence self-reliance push could lose momentum. The key areas expected to receive higher allocations include missiles and ammunitions, unmanned aerial vehicles and counter-UAV systems, electronic warfare, air defence, network-centric systems and technology-driven force multiplier equipment. We'll talk more about this with our guests who understand what the expectation here is and what the reality on the ground is. Joining us on the program is Major General A.K. Sivaj, former Chief of Territorial Army, Senior Defence Expert. Major General Dhruv Katoch, Senior Defence Expert and Director of the India Foundation, is joining us on the program as well. Major General Dr. Rajan Kochar, Senior Defence Expert, with us on the program as well. And Group Captain Dr. M.J. Augustine Vinod, former Indian Air Force officer, fighter jet pilot, MiG-21, is with us on the program as well. General Katoch, I'll begin with you. Well, there are a lot of areas that I've pointed out that the budget needs to in fact gravitate towards. Modernization, warfare and technology, naval and air force modernization is also something which has been slated as a priority in this. What I also wanted to in fact talk about was, apart from the Aatmanirbharta momentum that has been going on, is the BRO, the border infrastructure. Is that something that the budget also needs to robustly address now? Sir, first starting that first question with you.
Vineet, there is, just before I answer that, I just want to make one statement. Between 2019 when we went in for Balakot and 2025 when we did Op Sindoor, war fighting has completely changed. If you notice the manner in which we conducted the operations in 2019 and in 2025, there is a complete difference now. I think when we are looking at this present budget, that difference is going to be reflected. There is a difference in doctrine. That is one. Number two, in terms of allocation, I don't see too much, they may improve it by about say 10 to 20% from last year, but I don't think the government has the capacity to go beyond that. Number three, in terms of border infrastructure, that is vital to India's defense. Whatever the allocations which were given last year, the communication systems have actually improved tremendously over the last decade or 2 decades. That momentum is going to continue. There are two other momentums which are going to continue. One is as far as the naval platforms are concerned, uh, there is a long term. These are long term projects, and they have already been catered for. I think what we need to do now, in my view, which are going to be vital, is to get our jet engine technology right, and actually put in focus, tremendous focus and money onto that. That is one. Number two, as far as technology is concerned, the private sector has to be brought in a very, very big way. There is no way in which the defense public sector can do what needs to be done as of now. So how we are going to get this private participation of the private sector into it, and how we can actually revitalize our defense industrial zones, the two of them which we have got, that is going to be critical. I think money is going to be pumped in there. And this, along with, as far as the DRDO funding, the way you have mentioned it, yep, that is going to increase. But at the same time, the funding for research, I think, also has to be through the private sector, and appropriate incentives have to be given to them so that this sort of a funding can take place, that they actually come on board. The private sector has, the state was reluctant to involve the private sector. Now the state is more open, but the private sector has shown hesitation in some areas. I think those bottlenecks need to be removed, and we need to get in the private sector in a very, very big way. Otherwise, the budget itself cannot do what has to be done. Vineet.
You're quite right about that. Uh, it's important to understand the comparison always, Group Captain Augustine, is with China. The kind of budgets that China allocates every year to itself, and the kind of capital expenditure that they have been able to render and allocate for their defense requirements is obviously a benchmark for us as well. Though there has been a healthy increase of 9 to 15% year on year, do you think that is enough? Considering the fact, I don't know how else to say it, we have Pakistan on one side, we have China on one side, we also have Bangladesh on one side now.
Very true, Vineet. And in fact, as I'm hearing, since services also participate in, giving out the focus and what the direction should be. So there are three key aspects, as I see it, where we are going to push it. And the second aspect is more important in terms of not only increasing the capability from now to next one decade, but also to reduce the expenditure. And those three aspects or emphasis is going to be A, on modernization, B, like Jan Katoch said, on self-reliant defense production, that is IDEX and those kind of things. And most importantly, Vineet, is going to be the emerging technologies, which includes, artificial intelligence and those kind of things. Now, being from the Air Force, Air Force has always taken a bigger chunk of the budget for simple reason that it is A, technology intensive, and B, capital intensive, service, which is the reason, like Jan Katoch was mentioning about jet engines and stuff like that. So last year, if you remember, it was about 6.81 lakh crore, if my memory serves right, and the number that is being quoted in the wake of Ops Sindoor is about 25% increase. If it is going to be, you mentioned about 10%. If it is 25% increase, which I don't think why it should not, it will touch about closer to 10 lakh crores, and that is going to be the largest A, and the largest jump B. So these are two things which are going to really push how we are going to do the modern warfare fighting, especially given Pakistan and China. I'm not counting as much Bangladesh. LCA Mark II, Rafale follow-on orders. We are hearing a lot of noise on that. We recently signed. future of AMCA depends on this budget, Vineet, mind you, because AMCA is our flagship program. 2035, 2040, AMCA is going to get inducted into the Air Force, and we need it. Mid-air refueling, we've been talking about it for a while. Mid-air refueling, I think, will come in this FY, including AWNC, which is an indigenous project, which, as Kadutsa was mentioning. Unmanned aerial system, especially AI-enabled platform, which is critical for modern aerial operations, especially in an integrated environment, which means we are not only, Air Force is not only going to fight its war, it is also going to support naval warfare as well as the land warfare. And we are, mind you, taking on lease these aeroplanes, and the lease needs to stop. And when Americans will pull the plug with Trump at the helm of affairs remains to be seen. And the emphasis, like I said, on capital expenditure is going to be on airspace control, IACCS, Trigun, and what have you. So the focus is going to be a tri-services, theater command dish approach, so that if and when theater command comes up, our infrastructure is in place for a successful theater command, which is very, very important, and which is why in an aerospace technology, sensor fusion, next generation platform, these needs to come together as tri-services more than a single service, which is very, very important in my opinion. And AI and R&D is going to be the next generation of air warfare. There is no doubt about it. You mentioned it, General mentioned it. Therefore, the flight systems and autonomous drones, a lot of emphasis, we are currently working on that. I mean, I am personally
You're quite right
working
about
on
that.
including the electronic warfare and airborne network system. So all this put together, very wonderful year because in the backdrop of Sindoor, Vineet.
You're quite right about that. General Kocher, in fact, let's also talk about personnel and pensions. Out of the 100% budget that is allocated towards defense, 75% of India's allocation is consumed by salaries and operational costs and pensions. There is little left for acquisitions and modernization. How can this permutation, be better aligned?
Thank you, Vineet. You have rightly actually said and hitting the nail on the head. Revenue budget takes 45.8%. Pensions and salaries take 23.6%. And MOD civil head takes 4.2%. Balance is only 26.4%. And that is for your capital acquisitions. And one more, this is the way your budget is structured. So we're not going to see any change as far as the structure of the budget is actually concerned, and there is a requirement to start thinking on these lines. We only see an incremental approach in the sense that, okay, 8%, 10%, 12%. These percentages don't mean a thing, because last year a budget increased by 9%, a depreciation of the rupee and inflation. If you take that into account, the actually budget reduced by 3% in real terms. So these figures are very misleading, and let's not get carried away by these figures. Now, what is important as far as capital acquisition? And I'll give you an example. At the B stage, an amount X is allotted, and when you come at the RE stage, a revised estimate stage, we are falling short of spending the money what was allotted to us in the B stage. So, Defense Secretary had to make a statement on this, that it takes almost 4 years for getting a new equipment into service, and that is why DAP 2020, which is the defense acquisition procedure, is being revised, and I think the draft is already out, and maybe in a couple of months you will get a new procedure. And why the new procedure is required? Because of this problem of not getting our act of procurement together, and that is why the capital expenditure suffers, because government has given you the money, and it is criminal that uh, you are surrendering that money, and you are not using that money in that financial year. So that is one important aspect we have to keep in mind. A second important aspect is what I'm expecting is Sindoor tested our readiness, but it did not test our endurance. The budget must take into account endurance, and that is a surge capacity. Uh, a ramping up of all production targets to suggest in the case of ammunition, because in case we want to fight a long war, we need to have that kind of ammunition and the reserves which are available to us. Today, Iran is able to dictate things in the Middle East because it has got in excess of 3,000 missiles. So, similarly, our own stocking, our WWR, our reserves have to be ramped up. A second important aspect, I just talked about endurance. A second important aspect is sustenance. See, all our equipment, we have got very old equipment. Almost 70% of our equipment is legacy equipment. And it has to be upgraded from time to time because technology is changing. So this sustenance factor has to be kept into budget in a very, very big way. Third is mobility. You talked about border infrastructure and things like that, because mobility is very important. BrahMos battalions are being raised. Rudra brigade are being raised. Why are they actually doing it? To improve the mobility, and these battalions will need to be equipped with your high-tech weapons. So I think the budget you will be allocating a portion to that. And my last point is technology, because we have all talked about technology. What is important is technology is not that important. Assimilation of the technology into the weapon system is more important, and that is what is lacking in the armed forces, or especially Indian Army, I would say, because Navy and Air Force is still better off as far as assimilation is concerned. So now this is one gray area, and that is why in 2024 the chief of the army staff made a statement that
Right, sir.
2024 is the
Right.
year
So,
of
we
assimilation.
have to accommodate other opinions as well. I
Thank you.
understand where you're coming from, General Sivach. What about deterrence gaps for India? A lot of experts have pointed to the fact that, the percentage of GDP which is allocated to our defense at this point in time is pretty low. It's perhaps 1.3% of the entire output that India produces. The actual figure, a number of experts have gone on to say, should be somewhere close to 2.5, considering that China and Pakistan are leveraging this gap expeditiously. And plus, the Air Force has a shortage of fighter squadrons as well. Without an improvement in this budget to perhaps a 2.5% of the GDP, these gaps are not going to be functional or wise for the government or the military.
Very correct. Vinit, you hit the nail on the head. They don't deny the fact that even the Parliament Committee on Defense has recommended that your defense budget should be at least 3% of your GDP. Because if you see what's happening in your neighborhood, the China defense budget is about 4 to 4.5%, and Pakistan is again 3.5%. And remember that basically the pensions and pay, especially in Pakistan, is not given from the defense budget. So as far as India is concerned, that last year 6.81 lakh crore was almost about 1.5 to 1.8% of GDP, which was too less. Now this time after Operation Sindoor, it has to become almost 2.5%, and there has to be a improvement, and there should be now extra money given, almost about 20 to 25%. Now, why are we saying that? Why we need what we need? See, simple as that. The technology has made a lot of difference in Operation Sindoor, and if we have learnt our lesson well, we need all this technology to absorb in defense forces. What you need is loitering ammunition, you need artificial intelligence, you need drone, you need anti-drone strategy, you need electronic warfare, you need cyber warfare. It requires money, and you need modernization. And the point today is that absolutely correct that the war was only, it was just a conflict for 4 days. What has been taught to us in Russia-Ukraine war, that earlier we always used to consider the war will be short and intense. But this war has told you that wars can prolong up till 4 years. So you must have stamina to fight it. It means you must have your logistic system, supply chains, and also your weapons, ammunition, which can last you long. If you are thinking you are dependent on the foreign player, they will able to help you at that point in time, may not be. So therefore, what is the mantra? Mantra is Indianization. You have to now develop weapon yourself. And thankfully, in last 10 to 12 years, it has changed completely. Earlier, we used to get almost 75% of our weapons from outside and mainly from Russia. Now almost 70-75% weapons are made in India, and it is with that motto, make in India, make for world. You are now almost exporting 25,000 crore worth of weapons to the outer world, and it will increase to 50,000 crore. Therefore, the point today is that Indianization is the key word. And second thing is the technology need to be absorbed. You have to have a private partnership getting it. About 15,000 MSMEs have come. You have to spend more money on R&D. No one is going to transfer technology to you without any cost. So therefore, that is also very important. Two defense sectors which have come up, one in north, one in south, the UP as well as now Tamil Nadu. You need another two defense corridor, one in east and west, because you need all the hub center of all this industry to come. Remember, sometimes the countrymen feel it that you are spending too much money on defense. Remember, the defense and the also and the economy, they are the two sides of the same coin. If you want to be economically strong, you have to be also strong militarily. Otherwise, there is no point to be economically strong. You will become something like what happened to Venezuela. So the question comes as on today is, as you are mentioning, what about the
All right,
Air
sir.
Force?
All right, sir. I also want to get in Mr. M.K. Agarwal, senior economist, into this conversation. We have a paucity of time. Mr. Agarwal, what are your thoughts on this entire aspect of India accelerating its budget allocation towards the defense sector a lot more as compared to in the past? Well, China has an advantage. They obviously have that PPP factor, which allows them to not portray whatever they're spending on the military in terms of dollars, but the actual value, because of cheap labor in China, is obviously giving them a lot more than is reported. And of course, the Chinese government is not very transparent with what they put out.
Vineet, I believe no government is very transparent when it comes to, defense expenditures, particularly. And they should not also be. With regard to China, they are not transparent in any case. In entire their economic operations or political operations, they are not transparent. So let us not compare with them in terms of, their intensity of working on military operations or defense equipments. My submission here is defense preparedness is not possible simply in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. It is the cumulative effort that is required. And if you are looking from 91 onwards, you will find that in the name of saving money for public welfare, this or that, what they found that the defense is the best sector where they can cut down the expenditure, and no one will talk about that because no one will come to know, because directly no one is impacted. And its impact was realized in 99 when Pakistan, stabbed on our back. And when Atal government came, they started preparing, but they had a very small time. Again, there was a problem when between 2004 to 2014. There was no expenditure, capital account expenditure or anything innovative during that period. So that is the paucity. Let's consider that how can we fill up the gap of 10 years? Not in terms of money, rather in terms of preparedness, modernization, expansion. There are so many things. And what we are doing now, since 2014, it took this government many years to prepare itself. And now they are expanding in many areas. So defense budget is not as important. What is important that there is a continuity, there is a sustainability, and there is a proper emphasis on defense sector. With regard to salary pension, it is always there in any sector. It will remain. They will consume, and in defense, even this is, I believe, my personal belief as an economic student. I believe that this expenditure on their salary and pension is
All right,
just
fair
like
enough, sir.
any
We've run out
equipment
of
for
time,
that.
but I appreciate I appreciate your thoughts and your perspective on the matter, as well as the thoughts and perspective of all the experts who joined in. We'll, of course, be keeping a close eye on the budget as it's read out by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tomorrow. We take a short break now.